We're a literary city. Yes, we're a financial city. Yes, we are an entertainment city. But how is it that we are also a literary city? So many writers have come out of the city, and how come we don't have something that is ours in the intellectual and literary space? And that was a very small idea. Anil was very clear. He wanted to bring the written word to life. We want to try and give space for writers to kind of talk about their work. Very, very exciting that we are now becoming a proper cultural city. There's enough happening that is across the board. And the book is ready in terms of the artwork, everything is ready, but the printers are overworked. It means that more books are being published because more people are reading, more people want to know. Like everyone's telling you black, white, black, white, black, white, and suddenly all these poets have come out saying, actually, I feel a bit gray, in the middle there.
So good morning and welcome to yet another edition of Thinkly Talks. We are in conversation with Quasar Padamsee, formerly known as Q. Quasar is a lover of all things theatrical. He has directed and produced over 25 plays with QTP, his own home theater and arts management company, such as Every Brilliant Thing, So Many Socks, Minorities, and many other about contemporary social issues. He's also a founding member of THESPO, a youth theater movement, and at present, and the reason why we have him here today is that he's also the co-director of Literature Live, the Mumbai LitFest, and even that Thinkly is proud to be a part of. So with that, welcome to the talk, Quasar. How are you doing today?
Very good. Very excited. We're 2 days away from Literature Live, the Mumbai LitFest 2024.
Right.
And yeah, as you can imagine, things are crazy, but things are very, very exciting.
Man, absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time out in the middle of all this. I'm sure
No, not at all.
Be a chaos out there. So Quasar, I mean, you've been associated with the LitFest now, right from the start, from 2010, right? And I mean, you've seen this thing come alive and you've seen this thing grow. So just talk a little bit about how did this all begin, and how's the journey been since then?
So actually, I've been associated with Literature Live since 2008. I think even before we'd come up with the term Literature Live. I was at a table that was called by Mr. Anil Dharker, who was a journalist and a writer and an author, and there were a whole bunch of people sitting around this table, and there were people from the arts and publishers and writers and journalists, and we were all sitting around this table, and he proposed the idea saying, hey, how come Mumbai does not have a literary festival? We're a literary city. Yes, we're a financial city. Yes, we are an entertainment city. But how is it that we are also a literary city? So many writers have come out of the city, and how come we don't have something that is ours in the intellectual and literary space? And that was a very small idea. And it took him, honestly, it took him 2 years to kind of put everything in place to make Literature Live and the first festival happen in 2010. And it's been so wonderful to kind of ride in his slipstream,
Yeah.
because he was blazing a path through this forest that nobody had seen, and I was just along for the ride. And it started as a really simple idea. Our home has always been the NCPA at the southern end of the island, that Varun Grover quite beautifully calls now. He refers to the Mumbai Lit Fest as the festival by the sea, because we do have the sea on two sides. It's lovely. Yeah, it was just lovely to sit in his slipstream and just watch him try and build everything. And what is remarkable is this was a man who spent most of his life behind a typewriter or a computer. And now he
Right.
was trying to take all of that and put that in a place where people had access. He was very committed to the fact that literature must be accessible, which is why our festival is still and will continue to be always free. Everything that Literature Live does is absolutely free for the public. So to try and give as much access as possible. And bit by bit by bit, we started as a 2-3 day kind of event, very, very small. And then we've grown and grown and grown and grown. And now, I mean, this year we're 125 authors from 13 countries. It's quite amazing how it's the energy and the love, and it's all about, it's like people like you, yeah, who seem to like it and want to just be part of it and help out in some way, whatever that way is. Someone's hosting a dinner, someone's trying to tell more people about it. Someone called up and said, I'll host an author if you want, kind of thing. I have a spare room, so it's really amazing that we can have, Slovenians and Ukrainians and, people from all over the world that we otherwise wouldn't have had access to. And we
Right.
can host them in Mumbai for the people of Mumbai.
Fantastic. I mean, I think the whole energy towards this build-up must be insane, must be infectious right now, and we're just glad that we can, kind of help out in any small way out there. But you touch upon a very interesting point. I mean, Mumbai, the whole thing about literature, and I think also about culture. While of course we have this, entertainment and also theater to an extent, but I think festival like yours, like the Kala Ghoda festival, right? I mean, they really focus on accessibility, and I think that's really, a great underpinning to have, right? Now, you would have been associated, and I'm sure that, like you said, it started small, but it's now pretty much on the global map, right? But personally for you, what has been the most rewarding part of this whole journey over the last 14 years?
So there are two things. I mean, one thing was Anil was very clear. He wanted to bring the written word to life, right?
Mm,
And that's still the guiding principle that we follow as a committee, and how we're trying to, the kind of sessions we do, the way that we program. We want to try and give space for writers to kind of talk about their work uh, in a really exciting way. To be completely honest, even though I graduated in literature, I was a complete duffer when it came to that. And it is really strange, even though it was my core subject, it's what I studied and all of that. I didn't fall in love with literature until I saw Mr. Dharkar charge for it.
right.
Like in the sense that his focus and his excitement when he found a new book, or when he interacted with a writer, and that is infectious. I I suddenly said, hey, actually, I quite like being part of this.
Yeah.
Originally I was brought on board because I had a theater background. I was brought on board only to curate the performances. Like I said, he wanted to bring the words alive. And
Right.
we all our plays that happen, all our performances that happen, some of them are music, some of them are dance, over the years have always been connected to literature. So if someone's taking a Tagore poem and making it a dance piece, then there's a very strong literary connect to that. We've done short stories of Jan Martel, or things like that. There've been amazing things. They're all connected to literature. That's what our, and this year we're doing a lot of Greek myths, for example. The gods and Orpheus are both Greek myths that are now being given a new life in that. So his excitement to make it come alive. So I came on board really as someone a little bit distant from it,
Mm,
and it's impossible to not get swept up with it. So as I've seen it grow, um, it has been really quite wonderful, and to see how it now reaches out, the number of people it reaches to, people coming in. We found, Argya talks about this, one of our technical directors. One of his favorite moments that he's ever had in life is there was a mother with her a 12-year-old child, and they were sitting on the steps somewhere on the campus, and they were looking at the whole schedule and trying to pick out what they wanted to see.
mm,
And the mother was sharing that with the child, because the kid doesn't know about Rushdie or this, but that excitement is amazing. And in little ways, I hope we've made a slight difference to the city. We've tried to say, hey, this is a place where people can call home, come hang out with writers, have accessibility to these people, have access to these people. There's a really kind of interesting thing that we generally have a Q&A at the end of all our sessions, so that anyone in
right.
the audience can also ask. And that's kind of the guiding lights and the principles that Mr. Dharkar put. And then, unfortunately, when he passed away in 2021, we were first completely shell shocked, and then we looked at the blueprint he'd left us, and we were like, "Wow, it's a good blueprint." And we continue to honor him and his little gift to the city, which is really the joy of it.
That's an awesome story. And Mr. Dharka sounds like the professor you would have wanted to have at St. Xavier's College, right? As
Oh,
you know.
he was quite amazing. In fact, I used to argue with him a lot, because I kept saying, you can't be in. He wanted to be in every panel, right? He was a cricket fan. He knew history. He was one of those people who read widely, and he knew everything about everything.
Mm.
And he kept saying, why can't I be in this panel? And why can't I be in that panel? And why can't I do this? And I kept saying, no, we're pulling you out. So he said, why? I said, because if someone drops out at the last minute, they've got, chikungunya or dengue or some problem, then we can stick you in. You are our substitute for everything.
Right.
And really he was. I mean, literally, I mean, I could tell him an hour before that, so and so's dropped out and all. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, I've read that book. I'll come. And it would be like that, it's really an amazing man. I mean, really, I owe him a lot. I think we all do. I think the city of Mumbai owes him a lot.
Of course.
Um, but he had a wide range of interests, and the fact that he wanted to share that with everyone, I think, is really, really exciting. They don't make him like that anymore.
Before we double down further on this LitFest, what were your early days in college like? I mean, were you typically hanging out in the woods, in the canteen, in the theater? I mean, what exactly was happening? I'm from Xavier's though, so
Oh, okay. Yeah. So those are the people who aren't from Xavier's. Xavier's has three trees that we like to refer to as the woods.
yeah,
It's
that's it.
actually, yeah, that's it. Three trees.
Yeah.
It's not some foresty, beautiful thing.
Mm.
So I would like to say I wasn't very involved in the actual academia at college. I only went in mainly to get a degree. And what I left with actually was some very, very good and strong relationship with friends, with people who I would not have otherwise encountered in life. Because the range of people that went to college, particularly
Mm.
at St. Xavier's, was very, very varied. I was a literature student. I was one of the last batches that Eunice D'Souza ever taught. I
Mhm.
don't think we got along, which is absolutely fine because she didn't get along with very many people, but it was lovely. It was this mutual kind of table tennis that we had. But I also owe her everything because at some point she turned to me and said, "Do you want to direct a play?" And until then, I had never considered being a director. And she had actually offered Aisha Dharkar and myself to direct a play together. And Aisha got a film, and then she went off, and Aisha turned to me and said, "It's yours. You deal with it," which was amazing. And my career as a director started thanks to that. Thanks to Xavier's, they gave us the space. There's a festival called Ithaca, which is bizarrely a literary festival,
Right.
um, and it's quite lovely. And I think there is some. I think Eunice would have been very tickled that now I'm the co-director of a literary festival. She would have found that very, very ironic and funny. But I have a lot to thank to the college,
Right.
and of
Of
course
course.
Father Fraser, who was, although he wasn't my principal, just generally the values, the stuff that he talked about were really, really quite interesting. And the theater company that we formed, all formed because there were 10, 12 of us who were all mad about the same thing in college together. And Arga Lahiri, one of our founding partners, said this the other day at a toast because we've just turned 25 as a company. And he raised a toast and said, "The fact that we're all still talking to each other is the real achievement that we've made." And we're all still talking together and working together. A lot of it is thanks to hanging out, at St. Xavier's College at that time. What I would like to call a very fertile time in my life when
Of
I
course.
discovered theater and I discovered direction. I was always in love with the theater, but I discovered direction, but I also discovered other people who were as crazy about it as I
Mm.
was.
Right.
And that was quite exciting. I mean, I didn't really spend that much time in class, I will be honest. A lot
I
of the
think,
time was in rehearsal rooms. A lot of time was on the cricket field because I played cricket for college. I
right.
played badminton for college. So very little, I think, was actually spent in class. I was not involved in Malhar at all. It was 3 days to go off and, visit my friends in Pune or something like that.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Uh,
Let's say Jamboree
um,
for the other guys, actually.
yeah, it was a very weird kind of relationship. But but I think by the second year I really found my tribe, if you want to call it that. And I think really that's what all college life is about. It's about trying to
Right.
find, you know, a collection of people that you can say, hey, and I would not have expected to be friends with these people, but because we're
Right.
in a college
Yeah.
environment and they're friends of friends and something clicks. And that's been just wonderful.
No, I think college has to be the most formative years, and
Yeah.
it's really a period of discovery, self-discovery, more often than anything else, right?
Yeah.
Kwasa, just moving along, they often say that, art imitates life, life imitates art, right? And, how do you really think that the cultural landscape of Mumbai has changed over the last, let's say, the 10, 12 years? And do you think your Litfest is able to reflect that back or is able to influence that?
So I think a lot has changed. I mean, just to put into context, we started a festival called Thespo, which is for young people doing theater
Yeah.
in 1999. And then I was part of Literature Live, which started in 2010, right?
Right.
So the fact that there's consistently new things that have been happening over these years does reflect very strongly on how the city's culture scape has changed.
Mhm.
From the theater point of view, there are more shows, more venues, more groups happening now than ever before. And I think also our relationship with space has changed. I think as a city, we were very, very kind of, we were very miserly with space for public performance.
Mm.
But like, for example, NCPA has started this program called NCPA at the Park, and they suddenly take over a park at, Churchgate, or a park in, they're doing something open air at, the Bandra Amphitheater.
Yeah,
These things would not have happened 20 years ago, and I think I think just generally as a city, we're kind of relaxing a little bit about
absolutely.
making public space for the public,
Mm.
as opposed to everything being either commodified or held, back. And I think in that space, like Kalagoda is an incredible festival, right? Like
Mm.
it's mad. It's a bit of a mela, and sometimes it's a bit overwhelming.
Mm.
But the fact that it's it does wonderfully, and I think Literature Live is part of that's resurgence of the city, and we all exist, and we all have different places and spaces. The Prithvi Theatre Festival has its place, but I think it's very, very exciting that we are now becoming a proper cultural city. There's enough happening that is across the board. It's not just in one sphere, one kind of thing. I mean, whether you're talking about Mami, for example, or MIF, or the Red Lorry Festival, even cinema wise, there are three or four different kinds of things, and they're all slightly hatke, they're slightly offbeat.
Yeah.
um and Literature Live is great, and people like, they it all needs support, it all needs funding. So people like the Godreges, or like the NCPA, who are opening up their doors, or other players like that, are really important, because they
Right.
then feel ownership of the city, because they are the ones who built this as well as an industrial kind of hub. And then it's also part and parcel of them giving back, and that's lovely that stuff like this can happen.
You talk about especially about accessibility and about the whole relationship with space. And I think in many ways, the idea of Bombay is somewhere stuck to the 70s, 80s, right? I mean, it's something which is a lot about, South Bombay. It's a lot about the Marine Drive and
Yeah.
all. And I think the fact that the sprawl has obviously expanded, right? I mean, now we have New Bombay, which is like a complete city. You have Thane, which is like, it's like a giant. So, any thoughts about, and you've talked about, of course, occupying the parks and the places, but anything along the lines of, let's say, Litlef X or something, or which can
So
expand? Yeah.
so that's always the hope. To be fair, at one point we were actually across the city as well. We were doing the NCPA, which was the one home, and then we were also doing stuff in Bandra at a place called St. Paul's, and we were also doing Prithvi Theatre as well.
Right.
So at our largest, that was where we were at. In fact, that was just before pandemic hit. We were
Right.
across three things. Obviously, pandemic has different repercussions. Everything's had to change a little bit. And this year around, we thought, hey, let's bring people to a place, because I
Mm.
think that's also a part of reaction to the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think people need more. We have realized that we want people to be with each other.
Right.
So it's all very well to spread out,
Mm.
and reach out, but I think this year our idea is, hey, let's bring everyone together.
Mm.
Let's bring people to the campus, hang out in the gardens, have a cup of coffee together, witness a book reading happening in a corner, listen to some open mic poetry, watch a performance in a garden,
Mm.
um, and just kind of come together and be there for a length of time. So I think that's one of the ideas that we've gone with this year. The hope is always that we expand
Mm.
and we grow. I mean, I live in Andheri, so I've also seen this area become so exciting from the
Absolutely.
arts perspective. And I think that's the other thing, particularly with Mumbai, that's happening, is we are becoming a little bit more in our own little silos because of traffic.
Yeah.
We're all kind of holding those little thing. So suddenly Bandra is its own entity, and Andheri is its own entity, and Powai is its own entity, and I think that's also the new interesting that thing that's happening, because new spaces are opening up in these places.
Right.
All of a sudden there are three or four small little theaters that have opened up in Bandra, and some big ones. Bal Gandharva is a new theater; it's only 5 or 6
Right.
years old.
Mm.
In Andheri right now, we've there's the Veda Kumbha, there's another Veda space that's open. There's all the little Aram Nagar, Harkat, and Creative Adda, and all that's
Right.
happened in Andheri West. In Powai, there's new spaces. There's a co-working space for Often that suddenly have decided that on the weekends we will do shows. So they
Yeah.
open up their, and that's amazing, and they're incredibly well attended.
Mm.
Um, So I think this thing about art really, I mean, the fact that it's well attended and the fact that there are people that are doing it means that this is something desperately that the city needs.
Mm.
We have the neighborhood multiplex and we have the neighborhood pub. It's time to have the neighborhood art space as well.
Mm.
And we only hope that more and more of these kind of grow and happen. And I think we're on a trend where it will happen.
By the way, Kosar, I mean, the chat is lit with comments and questions, and
Oh,
the people saying hi, and there's Jill saying thanks a lot for your efforts for especially
oh,
keeping this free and getting such amazing giants to the Lit Fest, right? So I mean,
definitely.
people obviously appreciating the work, and I think the whole idea here is we try to just help you connect with some of them digitally, while of course it's
Yes.
about the yeah. Uh, you know, I was thinking about this yesterday. I said, Kosa, by the way, I love the name. It really is about, from astrophysics point of view, it's obviously that giant out
Yeah.
there, which is, but I was just thinking of this, I think of you like the Q, somebody who's a guardian and protector of
Okay.
culture. Think of it this way. I mean, your passion is right now all about theater, and then you spend your time about literature, right now. And in some ways, both of these are really, dying art forms, in that sense. I mean, we're really struggling in some ways. Of course, like when you see the Broadway, for example, in the US, that's is exploding still, right? But
Yeah.
in many forms, we're losing the whole simple art of reading. It's almost become like a difficult skill in that sense, right? The digital media, the OTT, and the short form content, right? What is your take on this? I mean, are you?
So it's
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, it's really interesting that you say that, because there are two things that we've discovered in the last 3 or 4 years working on this. And obviously the death knell of arts is a standard, right? Whenever there's an economic downturn, the first thing that budgets are cut from are the arts. And that always makes it difficult, even though they're so essential to our well-being and our existence. But here two things I'm going to say really, really quickly. One is there has been a resurgence of bookshops,
Yeah.
right? Which we all thought were done, right? Everyone
Correct.
said, okay, everyone's on Amazon or whatever. But there is this power of the browse.
Yeah.
People are going to bookshops and hanging out and trying to find things. And some of them are buying them for themselves, and some of them are buying them as gifts. But there
Mm.
is an uptick in bookshops and book sales,
Mm.
right? The other thing, and this is a little bit of a problem of plenty. I have never had as much of a tough time with publishers this year, pushing them to say, hey, is your book going to be ready in time?
Mm.
And the book is ready in terms of, like, the artwork, everything is ready, but the printers are overworked
Wow.
because so many new books are coming out. And that is while it pulled my hair out for a little bit, but it's also a lovely problem to have.
Mm.
It means that more books are being published because more people are reading, more people want to know more of this. And that's quite an exciting kind of uptick. And the other thing is a project actually that we started last year, because just as you say, digital, this, that, everyone is on it. I mean, we all talk about, the next generation really not interested in reading. Why would they read? What is the
Right.
point? All of that. And we came across a lot of young teenagers who are passionate readers.
Mm.
There's someone that we met called Zera, who read 35, who won a readathon because she read 35 books in a month or something like that,
Wow.
right? And we are actually getting her to be in conversation with a writer as one of the sessions for the children's festival. And we're meeting a lot of these 13 to 17 years. So we started a program called Booksters, actually, which is
Mhm.
to try and build a group of young readers who come to the festival. They hang out as a group. They go and attend different things. You know, we want to prioritize them a little bit, so they get a little bit of priority in what they see and what they want, and they get and then at the end of it, hopefully they will then be inspired to keep reading, keep writing. And this
Right.
year our cohort is 10. We've got people coming from Hyderabad and Delhi and all sorts of places. So while yes, the uptick is small, it is an uptick.
Right.
It's not all kind of
Right.
doom and gloom. And if for the literary fraternity, I think it's very, very exciting actually where we are at.
Absolutely. In fact, just yesterday I was at a dinner with a firm that I'm associated with, and
Yeah.
they had a senior guy leaving the place. And at the end of the dinner, he actually gifted each one of us a book, like 12 books,
Ah,
and he had picked up the book based on each person's preferences, what he perceived, with a small note. Now that's something you can't recreate with any other digital gift, right? I mean, the personalization and that.
absolutely. So I like just as a reading habit. Okay, so I got someone gifted me a Kindle, because that's what you were doing at that point. It's very exciting, and you were like, yeah, I've got now so many books in one Kindle and stuff.
Mm,
And there are three or four things that I missed, and I went back to, and I would encourage people who do read to think about those. So yes, when you're traveling, a Kindle is great. You're
absolutely.
not carrying too much.
Mm,
But there were three things I missed. One was I missed the physical act of turning pages, right? Just that and not just the turning of the page, also the sound of the turning of the page. The fact that you've accomplished something and now you're moving on and you're getting lost in that.
absolutely.
Second is the smell of a book, right? There is
That's
something
true. Absolutely.
magical about it, right? Like yeah, like. And the third thing is when you hold a book, whatever book,
Yeah.
when you're holding something and you're going through it, um, there is a past and there is a future.
Yeah.
What happens with the screen, unfortunately, is we're not aware of what is before and what is after. We're only on that. So when we're looking at a yes, it says 27 of 150 or whatever. But for me, when I read a book, the fact that I have witnessed something that's happened before and the fact that there is more to come, that becomes very exciting. And I really, really enjoy the fact that I am now in transience. I'm on a journey, and I can physically see that kind of journey happening, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. There's so much magic to just simply holding a book. I'm with you on that. So tell me, at the same time, Quasar, as we are transforming into, let's say, a new age in that sense, and there's obviously digital is here to stay, and we have to kind of try and kind of coexist with that, right? Uh, are there any changes that you're bringing in the LitFest formats, or are you anticipating any changes which will adapt this? And again, to that point, are you more the purist who's trying to hold on to the tradition, or are you the one who really is trying to push forward?
So I mean, I think I'm a bit of a romantic in that way. I think
Yeah.
the spaces where good scholarship of any kind and conversation about it is
Mhm.
now getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so when someone has written a book, it's taken them usually 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Or at least 2 years since you've had the idea to finally, having it published, which means that
Mm.
there is actually some engagement in it. So when a conversation happens, it is much deeper, right? Today, because of the comment post or even our television channel formats, we're all armchair guys, man. We just, we have an opinion and we can just blurt it out. And it's not really considered. There is no nuance.
Yeah.
Everything's either black and white. And I think there need to be more spaces for nuanced conversation. And I think that's what the literature festival then allows.
Mm.
Because you have people who have, so for example, this year the debate is on is AI is a threat to humanity, right? And we were talking about it, and it's a very drawing room armchair topic. And then we suddenly went, hold on a minute, who really knows about this, right? And we've actually put a panel together, and these guys have written about it. Marcus Ducertoy, for example, who's on the panel, he wrote a book in 2014 about AI and creativity, and everything he wrote then is now coming true. And he's in the middle of
Absolutely.
a research of his next book on AI as well, and he's one of the great mathematicians of the world, and he's going to be speaking at this. Then you have Rajesh Parekh, who's using it from the medical point of view, and is but so suddenly we've got people who are genuinely experts. They've spent time with it. They've put their hands in it and are now hopefully going to open it out in some way for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And that's really what these platforms are. So I think also in terms of format, we consistently evolve.
Mm.
Um, where we're constantly changing up things that how things happen. We have a book club format, which is for our book in focus, which is the Metamorphosis this year, which is
Mm.
because it's the 100th year of Kafka's death anniversary.
Mm.
And if the world was ever has never been more Kafkaesque than now, uh, so it's a good one to kind of have. And Rishi K will host that, and it's basically everyone sits around and chats. There are no experts.
Yeah.
everyone's opinion is fine. What did you feel about the book? How did it make you feel? Do you think it's worth anything? Do you think it's garbage? That's also fine. You know,
Right.
um, and I think we keep evolving formats like that. You know,
Mm, mm,
um, and some of them are readings, some of them are performances. I mean, we're doing a project called Mosaic and Me, which is first time
mm,
poets who've been gone through a certain project with Word Travels Australia and
mm,
Pomegranate. They've come together to do that, and where then 9 poets have been selected to present the first time they've ever written, and they're all from marginalized communities. So
mm.
it's there's young people, there are women from marginalized communities, and there's transgender people who are getting to write their first poem and then share it with the audience. So
Right.
all these little things are how the arts and life reaffirm our love for the world, love for being alive.
Mm,
So all of a sudden, I know when we started literature live, it was about bringing the written word to life,
mm.
but now it's almost like literature is about being alive, and we must celebrate that. So
Right.
yeah, as that turns, we turn.
Right. Wonderful. I mean, I think one of the first casualty that really happens with the short form content, and I think a big case for why book reading and festival like yours need to kind of be there, is really that it's our inability today to have nuanced discussions. Because we just look at something and we jump to that, and our inability nowadays to be able to hold two thoughts at the same time. You know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The fact that there is nuance, I think that's also why there is such a resurgence of poetry.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yes, you may call them Instagram poets or whatever, but all of a sudden, one of the wonderful things about poetry, and it is almost like a counter movement, right? Like everyone's telling you black, white, black, white, black, white, and suddenly all these poets have come out saying,
Yeah.
actually, I feel a bit gray, in the
Yeah.
middle there. And poems are wonderful things because they have gaps, and you
True.
fill the gap with your own imagination, and
Absolutely.
your own interpretation. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that reflects even in our programming this year.
Mm.
Like someone once asked me saying, don't you have a theme every year and all? Well, like, it depends on what people are writing about. Our
Right.
theme is what people are writing about, right? We can't say, hey, we're going to focus on this, or we're going to do that, or we're going to do, this thing. So invariably we'll have 3 or 4 themes, but they emerge kind of organically. And this year, the amount of poetry that's being generated,
Mm.
and the look at poetry, I think that is a reflection of where we are as a people.
Right.
And that's quite interesting. I mean, we've got some Slovenian poets who have been translated into Marathi, you
Wow.
know. So like poetry is kind of crossing, it's crossing everywhere.
Yeah.
We've got um uh you know uh Arundhati Subramaniam, whose book is about how women sang about the divine,
Mm.
in poetry, in sing, from the bhakti poets onwards, kind of thing. So it's really kind of a madness. Gulzar Saab is doing his collection, which is this beautiful book. It's really
Yeah.
beautifully brought out, and some
Mm.
poems are just um, and you feel, yeah, this is a celebration of that.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's quite exciting, and some themes do emerge. I mean, like this year, for example, in particularly because we are the Mumbai LitFest, in October this year,
Mm.
Marathi got um, designated as a classical language. It got
Yeah.
that status, and we're the Mumbai Lit Fest. We have to pay homage to that, right? It would be silly not to. So we've got about 4 or 5 things that are happening, like these
Yeah.
Slovenian poets who translate to Marathi. El
Mm.
Kunchwar Saab is his Marathi work has been translated into English. We're doing a
Mm.
whole session on Jayant Dalvi um, as a writer, so not just his plays, but also his novels and also his journalism. You know,
Mm.
uh, um, we've got Henrik Stegmüller's book, which is about the Wari and about working with Dilip Chitre and stuff like that. So it's
Beautiful.
suddenly open, and Shahu Patole's book, which is just, if you haven't,
Mm.
just please, that's a book that I think is very very important. It's called The Dalit Kitchens of Marathwada, and I think everyone should kind of pick it up, because yes, it's about food and recipes on one level, but it's also about a social history,
Mm.
and about something that I must admit I did not know very much about.
Right.
I will put my hand up there and say my own negligence, but I did not know very much about, and it opens up. So these are all really exciting things that are kind of happening. So suddenly a theme sometimes emerges out of out of
Right.
based on what people are writing about.
Right. It's really insane how literature, poetry just connects these so-called unconnected thoughts, right? And then you say, oh my God, it just seems so, natural when you look at it in
Yeah.
hindsight, right? It's
In
amazing.
fact, one of our poets, one of our participants is Ostap Slivinsky, who's coming from the Ukraine, and he's done a really interesting book where he's like how war changes the meaning of words, like language, right? Changes, and it's done in these short little stories, and one of them is for the word garbage, and it's based on interviews that he's had with people who
Mm,
are going in a war zone, which unfortunately Ukraine still is.
mm,
And one of the interviews is on the word garbage, and it's a beautiful little story about a woman who's thinking, should I take the garbage out, and leave it at the side of my curb? Does it matter anymore? You
yeah,
know, but how can you take out garbage and put it in the city when anyway right now the whole city is garbage
yeah.
because everything's bombed there. So it's just how words change and
Mm,
how meanings change. And
mm,
language is a fluid thing, and it's just beautiful to be along the ride,
right.
with that.
And I think with this whole advent of AI, I think eventually it's probably going to be language and emotions that will probably keep us most human. Right? Because in every other thing, machines and robots and algorithms are way ahead of us, right? But I think this is the soul that's going to probably keep us humans in that sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a tough thing. How do we kind of hold on to what it means to be human? What does that really mean? I think that's where
Yeah.
we are at right now as a people, because if we look at the last 2 years, right,
Mm.
the leap in what AI has been able to do has been really, it's been a bit for me overwhelming. Like it's happened so fast. Obviously the doomsdayers in our head, we all think of Skynet and Terminator 2 and all that's about to happen. um but it's also like I mean, I remember about 10 years ago I read a quote, uh, or just a, not even quote, just a funny comment, which was, all the science fiction novels of the 50s, 60s, and 70s promised us flying cars. All we got was sliding doors, you
Yeah.
know. And in the last 10 years, we've gone from sliding doors to like everything that you can
Yeah.
imagine or that has been imagined before.
Right.
Self-driving cars to, drones to all sorts of things.
Right.
So the advances that have been made in that are very fast, and we need to keep catching up as the people and figuring out where we exist in that,
Right.
as just human being. And
Right.
for me, particularly with the theater, because everyone said that the theater is dying since the beginning of theater,
Right.
but it's the oldest art form. The first time someone killed a woolly mammoth and went and told the story to another person,
Yeah.
theater was invented, right? Like that first kind of thing, in whatever gesture or sound or whatever.
Right.
And now where we are at, which is where so much else is digital, I think the theater and arts festivals generally are about human connect, about
Right.
meeting humans face to face and really connecting with them.
Right.
And I think that's our role, I guess, as organizations in that way.
Right. You talked about, what does it really mean to be human? Yeah, in an AI world, right? And I mean, this whole diagram of the Sisyphus, right? Pushing the boulder up and down, right? I mean, we've been doing this for ages, and
Yeah.
then AI comes along and say, hey, you know what? Let me pick up this boulder away from you, and you can relax. And you know what? We don't even know what to do after that, because I mean, it's about getting up in the morning, it's about getting to work, it's about fighting for a promotion for your job, right? And suddenly the AI comes along and takes us away. So I don't know whether that's a curse or a boon. And humanity is really, I think, trying to figure
Yeah,
this.
I think, yeah, I mean, we have to find what our purpose is now,
Yeah,
right? Because it's no longer picking up things. It's no longer, I mean, it's a weird thing, right? Like I work a lot in the written word, and now everyone's saying, yeah, but you can chat GPT and you can do this, and I'm going, but it is genuinely now, what is our purpose? What do we do, and how do we then push the next level of
right, right,
creativity? I will say, what is the next level of creativity? Because even AI has been generated by a creative being. Someone
right,
had an imagination to say, hey, what if this is possible?
correct,
And I think that's the strength that we have as people.
right. There's a question here from Sri Shetty, and even I was wondering about this, when I was thinking about it yesterday. She said that you're bringing in so many stories from diverse perspectives, right? how do you eventually decide on the themes and the speakers? The work must have started months ago, right? And how do you kind of zone in from there?
So yeah, we actually spend almost the whole year doing this. I think we take December off and then regroup in in January, with
Yeah.
our first meetings. And we're a small team. We're only about 6 or 7 on the committee that do the programming. And along with the programming, we have awards and we have all sorts of workshops and all sorts of things. And a lot of it is the lead from what are the books that we think are coming out, and what are the books that perhaps we were not able to feature in recent books. Like, for example, a book that comes out in October and November, it's very hard for us to feature because our programming is pretty much locked by then. So maybe
Right.
we look at that for next year, if it's an interesting book or if there is a thing. So we are very reflectionary to what is happening in the world. And that discussion starts very early. And then
Mhm.
we try and build bit by bit by bit. We also keep things in mind. We want fiction, we want non-fiction, we want some sport, we want some business, whatever the people. It, we're trying to be a little bit of a buffet so people can come and pick and choose and get a sense of that. This year, for example, there's a lot of poetry that's just emerged organically. It's not
Mhm.
something that we planned. It's not like we said, hey, this year we'll focus on poetry. No, it just happened. you know and poets from incredible nationalities and places. This year we also have a children's festival. So we have a whole bunch of stuff that's happening for children, which we call the Little Festival, which is done in collaboration with the HT Parekh Foundation.
Mhm.
um, and you've got and then suddenly we discovered that there are writers like a Farooq Dondi, who we've all known as an adult writer, but he's written so much work for kids. So it'll be
Mm.
fun for him to talk to kids, kind of thing. And Jerry Pinto to talk to kids. And Madalena from Italy, who's coming, who's going to talk to kids. And Marcus, who I talked about before, is going to talk about the mathematics of games, of board games, and what is really the maths involved in how that works.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of fun. These things just emerge as we're talking to people. And Marcus has a book called Around the World in 80 Games.
Mm.
So it's always about what is the book that's coming out, because the book tells us that someone has spent time working
Mm.
in, and the committee then also needs time to read these books before we program anything. So different members of the committee will read usually one or two, and Antoine Lewis, who's our programming director, will then say, okay, let's look at this combination, that combination, and we slowly. Rina will then come up with ideas for workshops and campus activities and contests and all of that. And slowly we kind of put the whole thing together. It takes a long time. And
Seems like a full-time job. I don't know how you manage to do this.
it's, you know, it, it's full time. It's not a job.
Right.
Uh,
That's therein the difference. Yeah.
yeah. And I think there is something to be said for the love of the pro-am, which is someone who's working at a professional level, but is an amateur status,
Right.
because they're doing it because they love it. They want to be there. Like the
Right.
committee, when we hang out, we want to be there. We want to talk about these things. And it's very, very exciting.
Right.
um and I think there's certain joy in coming and sharing and doing that. It's a lot of work, I will admit. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
But on the 17th night, when it's all over and we're all maybe sitting around a table at the end of the festival, we look back at it and go, yeah, yeah, well, it was great. Here's our month off. We're starting in about 4 or 5 weeks again.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it is joyous. I will be honest and say I sleep very little during the month of November.
Right.
And at one point I was like, oh, I'm cranky and I don't know why. And then you see what you're able to create because of all of that, and you're like, it's worth it. I actually
Worth it.
enjoy and look forward to this
Right.
weekend. When you see a kid with a map trying to figure out, what do I go and see next?
Mm.
Uh, or you I was last year I was walking along a path, and there was a writer that was walking next to me, and someone just bumped into them and went, you know what, I followed you. And it's not a very well-known writer. It's just, I followed your work. I know what you're doing. We do something called the book swap. So the
Right.
book swap is where you can come and replenish your library. So we have about 1,000 books, and you can bring, let's say you bring 3 books from your house,
Mhm.
and you can exchange it for 3 books from
Mm.
this pile, and you can browse and spend some time. And it's how people replenish the library. And
Mm.
amazingly, there was a book that someone wanted, and they couldn't. Uh, they hadn't brought a book to exchange, So then they went to the bookshop and bought a brand new book so they could bring it and exchange it for that book that they'd been searching for maybe 5 or 6 years.
Amazing.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a place, man. Come hang out. We promise the smell of books. We promise some really interesting writers that you can hang out and chat with. So that's kind of the vibe of the festival, I guess.
Now I'm just going to try and add some of the questions and just try and for the we're running out of time. So Anand and Lavanya, they're asking that what are the biggest challenge that you face while organizing such a large scale event? Is it the logistics? Is it about the scheduling, or maybe there's something that we don't even know, and that's your keep away.
So, I mean, logistics and scheduling are always tough. Obviously, also, how do we bring that many authors from around the world? My pet peeve is visa applications and getting them approved, which is
Right.
always tough. I mean, there has been time in the past where we have. In fact, one of my favorite stories is there was a Iranian playwright actually who was coming to the festival, a guy called Naseem Suleimanpur, and because he is Iranian but applying out of Germany, he lives in Germany now. His visa was taking longer and longer and longer, and he was supposed to arrive on day one of the festival, but his visa hadn't come. And he called, and then we were like, okay, we don't know what to do. We'll just wait. Uh, on day one, literally as the day was happening, I suddenly got a call from him, and he said, "Listen, the DHL package has just arrived. I've ripped open the package. My visa is there. I'm leaving the house now." So basically, he had his bag packed at the door, and
Okay.
he had it kept ready and all. And this is an amazing thing. This is the commitment for someone to want to come to a festival, right?
Right.
And he's like, "I know I've missed my first session, but can I come?" I said, "Get into the cab now." He jumped into the cab. This was about 11 o'clock, okay, in Berlin time. We booked a ticket for him while he was on the way to the airport, right? And he caught the 1:30 flight from Berlin, which eventually got him here about 2:30 in the morning. By the time he got to the hotel, it was 4. He had a 10 o'clock session the next that morning. He turned up for it completely goggly eyed, But it's just, I mean, so those are some of the nightmares, but they also give great stories because
Yeah.
you have
Right.
guys who are passionate like that who are saying, "Hey, can I turn up and can I make it happen?" Um, so that's some of the things that are tough. I wish there was more support for the arts generally.
Yeah.
I wish we could do more. Having said that, it's wonderful to have supporters like Godrej and Kotak and the NCPA who've really kind of rallied around to make sure that there is this space and this oasis for this kind of stuff. Um, but I wish there was a little more, kind of thing. Because then your scale can get bigger, the plans can be bigger, takes the stress off a little bit.
Right.
Um, and scheduling, which is quite a nightmare because you got to figure out who's coming when, who's
Yeah.
available when, all of that. But that's a logistical kind of thing, and that's with anything, I mean, if you were planning a party, that's the same problem that you're trying to have. Um, but yeah, so the difficult one is actually trying to make sure it all falls into place
Right.
without it getting too stressful. That's the challenge.
Right. And you talked about different experiments and all that you've been doing, and of course, this year working with us with Thinkly, as a digital partner, and trying to really get the voice across. I mean, what are the unique experiences or elements you wish to deliver through something like Thinkly, and what can we do? Let's say if we were to work closer with you in the following years.
So here's the thing, yeah, like we talk a lot about digital versus on ground
Yeah,
as kind of things, and I don't think they need to be that
that
binary.
definitive.
Again, that nuance is lost, right? They
Yes.
can actually interweave. They can actually marry and be something like in this platform. There may be people who've never heard of the literary festival, and hopefully they'll turn up, and that's kind of part and parcel of the point. There
Right.
may be people who won't turn up, but who have heard us talk and say, "Hey, you know what? I think I want to pick up a book." That's a win either way, right?
Mm.
And that's kind of what we want to try and do and try and find merging of that way.
Right.
And maybe that's something that, I mean, I know that we've only connected quite recently in trying to make stuff happen, but hopefully going forward, we're able to dovetail something much more holistic. Maybe do some conversations that can be streamed, from venues in a live kind of space and create something really interesting with that. Um, and try and just see how we can maybe work our way into people who maybe I don't know how many people are Mumbai based people who are listening right now may not be, and maybe they want to ask a question or get involved in
Yeah,
some way.
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I think the scope is immense, but we've got to kind of dovetail it and make it more
Right.
cohesive in some way.
Right. I think the opportunity, like you rightly said, the nuance is really about interweaving all of this and accessibility to people who may not be here maybe throughout the year in certain ways, because you have
Yeah.
this big bang calendar, the event out here, but something that kind of works throughout. So would love to explore that. Now, a tough question for you. It's over 3 days. If somebody has a couple of hours to come over the 3 days, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but
Um,
what would you call out? Which event, which speaker would you call out, and one that person to come and attend to?
for me, always that's so you'll have the regulars, quote
Okay,
unquote, the regulars, right? Or the
right,
people that people know about.
right,
Gulzar Saab is doing our opening.
of
He's well
course.
known. He's beautiful speaker. Um, but for me, always the fun is the ones that we didn't quite know what they were going to be.
Hmm.
And they become quite interesting.
The wild
Uh,
cards.
though, yeah, I mean, they're not even wild cards. We know their credentials and we know their good things, but suddenly you stumble on something that they're doing and it's magical.
Hmm.
So for me, Ostap, for example, is one of those people. David Aliaga, who's a Spanish novelist, is another person that I'm kind of looking forward to kind of listening to. Shahu I've mentioned uh, earlier. I know it's a weird thing, but I'm quite interested in trying to listen to what Huma says about being a writer. So Huma Qureshi has written this lovely book called Ziba, the Accidental Superhero, and it's quite out there. Like it's really weird that someone in her position has decided to kind of pick the superhero genre and has written this wonderful. You can call it a young adult book because it's about a superhero book, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I picked it up to kind of browse through it to know what to talk to her about, and suddenly, cover to cover, done, kind of thing. So I'm quite interested to understand how did that click in, because it's a lesson for anyone who wants to be a writer.
Right.
Like where does that happen? Um, so there's a lot of really interesting stuff. I mean, obviously Dalrymple is in and he's talking about it. My pet one is the fact that Mohinder Amarnath is going to be at the festival. And I'm a mad cricket fan. And in a
Yeah,
weird way, it's also a tribute to Anil because he loved cricket. And
of course. Yeah.
uh, in fact, we had a combined moment one year. So it was Sachin's last test, 2013 at the Wankhede, and it clashed with the LitFest, right? So neither Anil or I could go.
Okay.
And a lot of writers were going back and forth, right? They were going, attending a session and then coming back and whatever. And there was a moment where Anil and I are both standing at the experimental steps, and we can hear the crowd from Wankhede, the NCPA, and we're both looking at each other going, like, we're stuck here, we can't go, and
Right.
so the fact that Amarnath is coming with his book, and it's a preview to his book, which will be quite interesting and exciting.
Lovely.
So there's a lot of really interesting, crazy stuff that's happening. I love the fact that Pratibha Ray has accepted to be our lifetime achievement awardee.
Right.
Her Odia work is just outstanding and unbelievable. And Arvind Krishna Mehrotra, who's a poet laureate,
Mhm.
it's very funny because we keep talking to him and he's like, "Why are you making a fuss? Why is this happening? No, I don't want that." And he's so self-effacing. And I,
Right.
I want to just see his expression when he actually turns up at the festival and sees how much of a fuss we're making about him.
Right.
So that'll be kind of fun.
Right.
And Urvashi Botalia, and I think this is an important thing. So I don't know how many people know about Urvashi Botalia, but she's, other than being a writer, she's also an incredible publisher and a very, very much a feminist icon. Um, and she's getting the Rotary Writing for Peace Award. And I
Mm.
think writing for peace is a big thing in today's day and age when there's so
Right.
much conflict, and
Yeah.
people who have kind of given their entire lifetime to kind of write. So Yeah, sorry, I know I'm not narrowing it down at all.
No, but I think you
I,
handled that with
uh,
aplomb. You
uh,
gave a
um,
good gist.
yeah, it's a bit mad. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, like yesterday, as a committee, we were having arguments about who's going to attend what. Because you need one committee member and everything. Like, no, no, but I want to be there. No, but I want to be there. No,
Right.
kind of thing. I
That
mean,
sounds like
like
fun.
so. Yeah,
Wonderful.
I mean, I'm quite excited because Apu Pen and Gautam Bhatia and Lavanya is talking about science fiction, and I think that's something that's very interesting from the Indian context. I think science fiction is going to be one of the next
Right.
big genres, and there's already some movement that is happening in that direction. But I think it's going to kind of explode a little bit in the years to come because
Right.
it's very hard now to write fantasy fiction because everything you write fantasy is coming true.
I tell you, I was having this conversation the other day. I said, there was Foundation, there was Star Trek, there was Star Wars, and
Yeah,
but what do you even begin to imagine now?
yeah.
I've, it's
So that's
so
exactly why I think this genre is going to be so exciting because it's going to
yeah,
imagine the world that we want to live in or that we're going to live
right,
in.
right,
And I think that's quite exciting.
right. This has been fantastic. Kosa, just talking to you, we are on the hour. I told you that yes,
Okay.
we'll stop on the hour, and I know you have places to go. But before you leave, if Mumbai LitFest could leave one lasting legacy, what would you want that to be?
So I think Literature Live, the Mumbai Lit Fest, when it started, the idea was to have a space for people to have nuanced and strong discussion,
Mhm.
and the fact that all opinions can be aired out in this space.
Right,
And I think again we evolve based on what else is happening around us. And when we started, it was just a place that people were coming and listening to talking heads,
right,
which is important. But I think as we've evolved, it's suddenly become a place where people can actually listen to two people have a conflict of opinion.
right,
Where in an age where everything is a little bit pumped up, if you know what I mean, like everything is about promotioning something.
right.
And the fact that there can be discussion, there can be nuance, there can be, something interesting. I mean, we the some of the books that have come in for our awards. So we do the Literature Live Literary Awards, go to Literature Live Literary Awards every year, and we do them in book of the year fiction, book of the year non-fiction, book of the year business, first book of the year fiction, and first book of the year non-fiction.
Right.
And the fact that someone has taken time, like there's a lovely book called Love in the Time of Hate that is looking at the journey of Urdu and how Urdu writing has responded to what is happening in the last few years.
Mm.
H Pop, which is another book which is about pop star, the new age of Hindutva pop stars. And these
Right.
people have taken time. They're doing the research. They're really bringing out. Yuvan Avez's book, Intertidal, which is looking at the environment in a really fantastic way. And these are the deep kind of people who've really tried to understand the material.
Mm.
Um, and they need a place to talk about this and hopefully inspire people to read and write and do things like that. So that
Right.
that I think is where uh, what I see the role as the Lit Fest to be, the
Right.
role of Literature Live to be, where fans of books we're basically boosters, man. Like it's not like we're selling anything. We just want we like these books. We want people to come and hang out and say, hey,
Mm.
I got something out of that. And there are performances and poetry readings and all sorts of activities. There's some crazy stuff happening. So yeah, just come hang out, dive in, swim a little bit into the world of literature. Is basically the impulse.
Wonderful, Kausar. I mean, it was fantastic. I didn't realize how the hour flew by,
It's great.
and I would have loved to continue with you, but I know you have things to do. You have an event day after tomorrow, so wish you the very best. Power to you, and please keep doing what you do. We'd love to be associated with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Please
All right.
do come 15 to 17.
Of course. I mean, you
NCPA.
just excited everybody on this thing. I'm sure people who can make it will definitely try and be there. Yeah.
Excellent.
All the best. Take care.
Bye. Thank you. The festival is from the 15th to the 17th of November, which is day after tomorrow till Sunday. So it's a weekend of literature. There's some amazing stuff happening. So please, come hang out, hang out in the gardens. There are food stalls. There are lovely little activities. We've got a little poetry garden where you can give someone a word and they'll write a poem back for you. And we also have a children's festival actually this year, which is really exciting and new, which is happening from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 1 o'clock on Friday and Saturday. And there are performances. We've got a performance in the garden. We've got one performance which is called The Gods, The Gods, The Gods, which is a gig theatre, I guess would be what you call it, which is we've taken out all the seats of the experimental theatre at the NCPA, and it's a standing room show, and it's like a narrative concert. It's a concert, and they tell stories, and it's 12 songs, and it's all connected. So it's one big narrative that they tell you through, but it's like a music. I can't say a rock show, but a music gig is really the way that it works. It's quite a beautiful thing, and the way that they tell stories is really wonderful. And we've got a fair amount of poetry as well at the festival. I mean, Gulzar Saab kind of kicks off the festival on the first day. He's launching his book, which is this beautiful magnum opus called Balo Par, which is a collected set of works. It's really a collector's edition, actually. It's quite beautiful. And he will be in conversation with Pavan Verma, talking about, why poetry is life, why is poetry important to today, and especially today, given where we are with all the craziness in the world.